Welcome to Inside of the Pleasure Studio podcast, where we strip down truths and bear it all as we get real about all things sex, intimacy, and relationships with oneself, another, and the world around us, celebrating the joy of being fully alive and exploring what it means to live a life rich with passion. Every episode, we confront the conventional and break open the cages of censorship as we explore the untamed and often unspoken aspects of intimacy, cutting through the bullshit as we challenge sexual norms and provide you with the unvarnished truth about what it takes to have a fulfilling sex life. So if you're ready to dive into honest and very often provocative conversations that empower and enlighten, you've come to the right place. I am Melissa Louise, your wild host, bringing to you fearless honesty on this unapologetic journey as we talk about sex, love, and life in ways that are smart, fearless, and fun. Because, lover, this is not just about pleasure. It is a fucking revolution. Oh, lovers. I am actually really excited to be bringing this episode to you. This is Melissa Louise, your absolute pleasure advocate. And today's subject is a topic that for many women, it feels unattainable. It can feel revolutionary, and yet it's so, so necessary. And that topic is about taking at least 24 hours of rest in your dark moon, in the day before you bleed. And if you can't do it exactly the day before you bleed, even day one of your bleed is really necessary, if possible, those 2 days or a few days before your bleed. Now, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about how women are governed by the moon cycle, why it's so important to be taking this day of rest, and also why it isn't so out there as you may think when you first hear about it. And also to start to debunk some sort of constructs that we have in our culture. So if you are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm really excited to be speaking about this today. And this is something, this dark moon day of silence has been something that I've been practicing for the last 18 months. And what I'm actually giggling about is here I am recording this on the dark moon, as I realized, because I set up my whole diary a year in advance and I write it all down, 3 days before the dark moon, 2 days before. I have a whole I put lines in my diary. I'm so old school. It's not here. It's on the other desk in the kitchen. But, I have a physical diary and I put lines in through when it's like 2-3 days coming up to the dark moon. So I know to be slowing down. Also, so I can be reminded for myself that if things feel really clunky and if I'm sort of going, I can't move, or why am I not able to sit and function for a good 2 hours, 3 hours in a row? Why am I finding it difficult to handle or to assimilate this sort of information that could be coming to me? And I'm like, well, why is it bothering me so much? And I get to look at my diary, it's like, okay, the moon in the sky is going in the dark moon. She's going dark. She's in her waning stage. So I'm a woman who's in her regenopause. And I'm very, very blessed that whilst I was bleeding, I got to spend 5 years in the jungle in Costa Rica, which meant the day that I bled, the day before I bled, even like day 2, day 3 of my bleed, I'm barefoot on the ground. I'm bleeding on the ground. I am, removed from big social events, having to be on. And I took a lot of time to myself in that first day of my bleed. And it's not until, the last 2 years that I really started to realize that actually the day before the bleed is so potent. Yes, I completely understood, I've sort of learnt a lot about my cycle through Jade Mason, which if you've been following me for a while, Jadey and I used to work together when she was over on this side, also being in Australia. But, we did it, I learned a lot around my menstrual cycle through her and around the different energies in our cycle. It was her that really gave me the tools to honor my cycle like I was able to. And my biggest regret is that I didn't learn this in my teenage years when I first started bleeding, like most of us women do not, and because most women teaching women, well, most women that are raising girls are also not following their cycle. Our mothers and our grandmothers have been bullied and coerced and live in a dogma that is run by the sun cycle, which is the masculine cycle, even though half of that fucking planet are women. And we are all here because women grew the human race inside of their wombs and birthed them. And the whole human race has been birthed through the vagina of a woman. So the fact that women do not go through rituals, their own feminine rituals, their own menstrual cycle rituals, their own dark moon rituals, the fact that women are not being governed, not allowed to live under the governing of the moon cycle is diabolically insane. It's insane. And that we are raised in a culture to be shamed because of our cycle, to feel guilty because of our cycle, to absolutely hate our cycle, to feel annoyed by it, to feel inconvenienced by it. I mean, to be inconvenienced by a woman's menstruation cycle is just fucking nuts. If you have the privilege to have that type of annoyance, you're alive, and you're alive because a woman bled and because semen was ejaculated into a woman's body. It is the woman's body who grew the person that's being annoyed by a woman's cycle. So, circling back, I'm so passionate about this subject. This is a huge part of the female revolution, where we get to become revolutionary in looking after ourselves. We're not here asking permission, not here to say, is this okay? I would like to do this. We're here to say, this is what's happening and it benefits everyone. It's not this self-serving aspect of, well, she's on a period and she gets to take a day off. Like, fuck off. It's like, that so many studies show that if a man had to actually put up with the pain, I mean, there's all of these videos where, men get hooked up to machines that do the watts or do the same sort of level of pain. They get administered the same level of pain that a woman deals with that is quite common for women. It's not normal for a woman to have painful periods. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. And that we should be putting up with it. Our culture and the way that we're required to live has these results that women are often in pain during their menstruation cycle. And yet, when men are hooked up to machines and they're given just a little taste of it, it's like they cannot believe how painful it is. And yet women are consistently dismissed when they are expressing that they're in pain, that they need to take a day off, that they need to rest. And just as disease. So the reason why the dark moon silence is so important, which, is going to come about. I'm going to share many reasons why it's important. But just as we have, when someone is in a state of disease, so they have an illness that makes itself present, their illness hasn't just happened. It began decades before. You don't suddenly have cancer. You don't suddenly have irritable bowel syndrome. You don't suddenly have issues in your digestion. These issues and the beginning of the illness of the disease was initiated and began, decades before, with the type of food, the type of lifestyle, the stress, they're consistently pushing through stress and ignoring what needed to happen for the wellness of that person. So, same thing with our bleed. Now, in when we're looking at also menopause, which I hate calling menopause, it's regenopause. Excuse me, have some tea. The reason I'm keeping this hand down is I actually have an injury that I sustained when not sustained. I don't even like that word. I jammed my finger in a tractor door when I was 8 years of age, which means And I'm very lucky actually still to have at the top of my finger, just the way that I went like that as soon as it happened and held it for hours. That actually the skin started to, hold on and regenerate itself and re-knit itself, whatever, that they were able to save the top of my finger. But what happens is my nail comes off every couple of months because it grows to a certain, becomes hollow. And then, I garden, like I grow my own food. I've got all of these beautiful plants here. Like I'm very active in my life, which means I catch the nail. And so the nails come off and, I don't mind, but I know this is public. So people just get all, because they're so bored with their lives, they get all funny about it. But anyway, I have a nail missing. It's growing back. It always grows. As soon as it comes off, another one starts growing. So, what was I saying? Oh, menopause, which is regenopause. We also, when people are looking at the issues of menopause and going through perimenopause, that doesn't just start happening then. Many of the symptoms and what women are dealing with in perimenopause and through menopause begins the moment that she starts bleeding. Because a girl in her menstruation, when she receives her first bleed, many, many girls, millions of girls receive that moment, which is the most exquisite rite of passage. It is one of the most beautiful times in a girl's life. It's like when she starts her menstruation cycle. It is greeted with annoyance, fear, shame, silence. And then when I say fear, the nervousness of being bullied for it, the fact that at school she will be bullied, the fact that she has to go to school on her period, that she will be teased and taunted for being a girl, teased and taunted and dismissed for having a menstruation cycle, to be told that she just needs to shove these things inside of her or use paraphernalia that's full of chemicals, that now she smells different. And so the shame of that, the dismissal that she needs to be resting. A girl is required to continuously show up in productiveness, in the production of life, when she is hormonally deficient and when her body needs rest. Because we live under a sun calendar, because the sun is up, it is not considered where the moon is in the sky to where our energy is. So for myself, as a woman in regenopause, my cycle follows the moon in the sky. I do not have a menstruation cycle that I'm also following. And this is the absolute incredibleness around the feminine, is that when in our bleeding years, when we still have our bleeding cycle, we have the energies of the moon in the sky in that cycle plus our own, because we are able to hold that. Women are so fucking powerful that they have the capacity to live with, among, and maneuver around these two cycles, the cycle of the moon in the sky plus our own. A man lives under the sun cycle. So what we go through in a whole moon cycle, 28, 29, 30-day cycle, a man goes in a 24-hour cycle. So this is also too, when we're looking at a woman taking a day off, at least, I'm just going to stick to one day, but it should be so much more than that. 48 hours. And we go, oh my God, but it's a Wednesday. And I'm going to get to actually, and what initiated this call. Oh, I have to circle back also to the fact that today is the dark moon when I am recording this. And normally I would be on a huge day of silence, and why I'm not, and when it's actually going to happen. But also too, how I can feel it today. Getting back to, so a woman in her menstrual cycle has all of these days of power creation. So when we look at, let's just say for the conversation's sake, 28 days, women can have between 26 to 32 to 35 day cycles. If we're looking at the quintessential 28, 29 day cycle, then within that 28 days of cycles, 29 days of cycles, of days within the cycle, she has the same amount of time of rest days as the sun cycle in a month. So we'll even go to, so we have, if you have a look at the weekends in a month, that's 8 days. So in a woman's cycle, she also has 8 days of rest. But when I say complete rest, it's like coming down, where she will have days all in a row, like her 20 days in a row of being on, which is 5, 10, 15, 20, Monday to Friday, 5 days, 4 times of those is 20 days. So in a woman, we have those 20 days in a row. So because we are bullied and we're required to be in the sun cycle on one cycle, even though there's 2 cycles coexisting in the universe, our cycles, when we're meant to be resting for our body so that we can show up as a woman in true wellness, if our dark moon and the crone stage is in on the, from a Monday to Friday, we're required to ignore that. We're required to act like men. We have to act like a man, which is just get up and go because the sun's up. So when we're looking at menopause and perimenopause, hate those words. Do not like those words. Regenopause. When we're looking at the stage of life for the feminine in the regenopause, the issues are not because we're because we haven't followed our cycle, and we have spent decades consistently having to put up with so much shit from the patriarch. And when I say the patriarch, the school system, the working system, the medical system, because we're female. So I want to bring to point actually this morning a text conversation I had, because I was about to go into my dark moon. And I because that's what I was talking about in my diary, my old school diary. I write it all in. I didn't do for December because I knew I went to Cuba, and for some reason I hadn't done it for December. When I did it in January this year, I'd only done, November, up to November, and so, and we are about to have our second new moon in December. So I didn't have all of the lines in my diary. And so we're getting through Christmas and we're getting prepared for New Year. And 2 days ago, I'm like, when is the dark moon? Like, I haven't had a day of silence for a while. And I'm like, it's okay, boom, 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 it'll be in my diary. And then I just realized what date we're at. And I'm like, shit, it's in 2 days' time. And so then I'm like, I have actually, normally when I'm when I have clients and I get to my dark moon, if I have calls, the week before I say, okay, I'm not working that day. We need to reschedule our call, But I'm 2 days away going, I'm going away Tuesday, New Year's, and I've got 2 days off. And I'm like, there's some things that I know for me to feel really restful on those 2 days. Like, really, I need to have these things done. So then I was going to I had a meeting with my son this morning, a video call with my son this morning, which is, as anyone knows with the teenagers, like, I'm keeping, that is gold. He's agreed, we have a time, I'm keeping it, that is gold. And I'll just turn my phone off after that. And there's just been things I'm like, I haven't had my full 24-hour rest, so I'm going to reschedule it. And so I'm rescheduling it to next Friday, Thursday or Friday. I don't know which day, but I will be rescheduling it. I will not go another. We will not get through the week. And I thought, that's going to be interesting. It's going to be new moon energy. It's going to be very creative energy. Like, what is it going to be like to have this day of silence in absolute newness, in the energy of the moon in the sky, where it's newness, where it's waxing, things are building, things are creating. So that's going to be a beautiful experiment. So that's why I am recording on this day. But I thought, wow, well, because I'm doing a little bit of work, I really want to speak to this because it's so powerful and potent. So I was in a messaging messaging thing this morning with a dear friend, and I said, hey, babe, I'm actually about to go into my dark moon, about to turn everything off for the next 24 hours. And she's like, oh my God. She goes, I so wish I could do that. But with 2 kids in the house and a man in the house, I can't. And I'm like, and this is where I want to bring this to, where women consistently sacrifice. So first of all, let's get clear. Those 2 children are in the house because of her womb. Christmas, I know this woman and I know what happened. And Christmas existed because of her in the house, just like for many, many households. Birthdays and Christmas celebrations and holidays exist because of the effort of the woman. So to have a woman say, I can't take this one day off a month is something in her brain that she's not worth it, that she doesn't deserve it, and that it's not going to be given to her. And I'm here to say, you don't ask permission. You find out the date. You give 2 or 3 options and you find out which day is possible, so that the household supports you, because the household is there because of you as a woman. Let's get fucking clear. The household exists in 99.999% of families, and the children exist in 100% of families because the woman grew them in her womb. So for her not to rest and her not to honor the cycle that fucking well created the human, then what is it in the belief of women that they can't take it? Now, when a woman takes her day in her dark moon, her rest, now this means for me, because I now don't live in a household with other people, I don't have my child living with me. And even when my child did live with me, and I stayed in bed. I didn't come out of the room. Yes, I know. And because I didn't have anyone else in the house supporting and making sure that he would not, sometimes he would get, it's so livid, or he'd just get ignored. He'd walk in and I just wouldn't speak to him. I'd hold that boundary because we don't have locks on the doors here. But when I was living in Costa Rica, when I lived in Vancouver, my friends would text him and say, just remember, tomorrow you're not to leave your mum alone. You know, tomorrow's her first day. I was taking my first day of my bleed as my day of rest and silence then. So I turn all Wi-Fi, and now it's more than 24 hours. It's actually 36 hours. So the night before the dark moon, the day of the dark moon, you know, as soon as the sun goes down, I turn off my phone. I take out disconnect the Wi-Fi from in the house so that the modem is not on. And I actually don't take my dog for a big walk. I get up really early, because I'm disconnected. Sun goes down. I'm in bed early. So I wake up with the sun or before the sun, and I go and I take my dog for just a little walk so she gets out, and I'm just inside for the rest of the day. I will often fast. Will definitely food fast, and not actually eat until the sun is about to go down on that first night, the second night after the night taking everything out. I'll just have tea, coffee, water, lots of tea, and then just eat one meal at the end. And I'm just often also too, there's something that I want to declutter, whether it's a wardrobe, whether it's a room in the house, whether it's the kitchen, the cupboards under the kitchen, or whether it's all of my books and notes. I don't have my computer on, and I don't, because there's no Wi-Fi. And I don't talk to anybody. Or I've even spent one time where I think I was in my garden planting, moving plants around, repotting, building soil, and just in my mind, because I'm not bleeding. I have more energy than if I was about to bleed. So for women who are still in their menstrual cycle, you are not required to do anything. You're not required to declutter. For me, in this stage of my life, in Regenopause, it's And because it's meditative and because I'm not speaking to anyone, I may be listening to some music, but often I've done where there's no music, there's nothing. I'm just in the spaciousness of the day and just, cleaning, cluttering, just one part. I don't clean the house. I'm not going to do that. And I'll be writing. I will write. I will meditate. I will do some yoga, some movement, that just whatever I feel like, or I'll just lay down and just be laying on my back, dozing, snoozing, self-pleasuring, writing, and things come, the things that I've created. I've created a whole TV show in these days. I've created courses in these, the Man in Control and the Feminine Pulse that she came out of one of the dark moons a few months ago. I've come up with ideas for stuff that I want to be doing in the future, like that, and also downloading. Like I've downloaded some pretty clear messages during this time. So if you're a woman in her menstruation cycle, this is the time of silence, because we have a culture that's set up where women are not supported to rest leading up to a cycle. The day one of their cycle, the first day of their bleed, when hormones are flooding in, and is often when women are in pain, they're exhausted. Yet the pure nature of a woman's first day of her bleed is this renewal, like she's bleeding, she's letting go. And also there's DMT running through her body, through her cervix. So when there's DMT running through her cervix, her communion with spirit, the ideas that come. So when a woman is taking, I would find that, on my first day of my bleed, it's like, I just feel high. I'd feel really out of it. I'd go in and out of it. It's not like consistent the whole day. But then the ideas that would come, the images that would come, and we need to be silent and alone and in a space where we can write all of that down, where we can play with that in our minds, where we have the spaciousness for that. And if we're blessed enough to be creating our own businesses, where we're working for ourselves, where we can work in our own time, what you will find when women are ovulating, we don't need a Saturday and Sunday off. We can work on the Sunday, we can work on the Sunday, we can have late nights. And when we're doing that, that means when we're getting into our dark moon, we can take these days off. So if we manage our monthly cycle on that type of energetic system, then we have these days of full power that are consistent for 20, 21, 22 days. And then we start coming down and we can have less duties. And so this whole thing of like, well, it's a Saturday, it's a weekend, which if you look at the etymology of that, the weekend, the end of the week, we're coming to the end of our weakness. We're getting weaker and weaker. It's like, there's so much control. This is the part of where we get to be really autonomous in our experience, in our own body, and we're not being told by a system that doesn't even understand fully the female body. And also too, just I mean, surely people are very aware of this by now, but where many female drugs, and even when we're looking at sexual anatomy, when we're looking at tests and studies done, it's done on male animals. So when we're looking at medical books and medical ideas around how the female hormonal system works and what medication is okay to take for certain things, these tests are done on male animals, and data from men's sexual response has for so long been equated then to the female sexual response. So therefore, the consideration and the knowledge of the feminine body in our modern world actually is not anything to do with the female body. It's to do with the masculine point of view, is the masculine project being placed on to women. So this is where women taking absolute control of their experience and coming back into the true experience in the female body is so important. And you're not waiting for a male doctor to tell you to do it. We're not waiting for a male politician to allow us to do it. I mean, the fucking politician is there because his mother birthed him. So taking this one day or taking 2 days a month is, yes, if you're in a family, you work just as you work to accommodate them. This is like, it's so diabolical to me. And I know this because I was raised in Australia. I was raised on the farm. I'm raised on this, where the masculine project fucking rules, even though the feminine is supporting it all and doing everything. And her consideration is always last. I know this because I've also lived in that I'm an inconvenience because I'm a woman, that my needs and my wants are too much, and that they will only be considered once all of the masculine needs and wants and desires have been sorted. Therefore, I may get a turn. I know that. I've been raised in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s with that in an Australian culture. And I've traveled I lived and traveled in Central and South America. I see it all the time. We're all here because we've come out of a woman's womb, and yet the absolute dismissal and degrading of the needs of the feminine, which in turn creates this environment, especially here in Mexico, of absolute emasculation. Women who manipulate, like when we look at the feminine that is manipulative, and it's like it has been born from. I'm not saying it's okay, but it's also a lot of that is the rubber band effect of needing to do something to find a way to have some power. But that is not the way to have power. The way to have power is to be truly acknowledging and honoring and taking care of your feminine experience. So the dark moon. So in my emailing list this year, I have set up that is it 3 or 4 days before, maybe I'll do it a week actually. Maybe I'll go and change those dates, because I think at the moment it's 3 to 4 days. I've set up that just before the dark moon of every month, because with women on their cycle, it's not going to be just the dark moon in the sky. You're going to be doing it for the day before your bleed. The day before you bleed is when you take a day off. And if you're in a lot of pain, you will find that by doing this and having more rest in your cycle, and following, if you actually want to understand more about your cycle, then we can work together doing that, like book a call, or all of the links are down below. It's definitely get into my Substack if you're listening to this on a podcast place, or if this is on YouTube where you're finding this, get into my Substack so that you get in my sphere. But tracking your cycle and coming into alignment with your cycle. Now, of course, if you are working for someone else, and not everyone has the absolute ability to completely do this, do it something quite close on that day. Make sure you do less. As you're coming in, if you're going to work on the first day of your bleed, that's like, number one, we've got to sort that out. I have supported many, many female clients to go to their bosses and show, because when you are working whilst you're bleeding, we end up, because we're hormonally deficient, especially coming up to our bleed, we're making more mistakes. I've had clients being able to prove to their bosses how they're costing the company money by being at work, a day or 2 days before their bleed, and especially they get to have those 3-4 days working from home. Now most people work from home. So if you are working from home, the thing is, if there's a death in the family, if you injure yourself and you go to hospital, you don't go to work. You're not on for your family. And my thing is, why the fuck are we waiting till we are incapacitated? We can't fucking walk because we're injured. We've been in a car accident, or our mother has died, or our father has, or our husband's in hospital, or or our child's in hospital. Then we get to have a day off. Then we don't have to do the duties in the house. Then we don't go to work. So we wait for horror. We wait for something so horrendous and frightening to remove ourselves from the life that we're always working. Why the fuck are we waiting for something negative to happen, to have that time away where we're not cooking, that we're not taking part? Why are you waiting till you're in hospital that suddenly your partner can cook for your family? Or suddenly you have a community that comes in and supports you. If you have a family, you get prepared. You have soups, you have stews, you have stuff in the freezer so that when you take your day off, they can look after themselves. And I can tell you, I have raised my child. He's healthy, really fucking fit, and all together there. And do you know what? Once a month, he would just live on toasted, well, because we're in Costa Rica, and here it was tortillas and butter. He never fucking died. He just ate tortillas and butter for a day and a half. He had other stuff there, and because he would sometimes like, he would just do, and he's like, no, I don't want to cook that. I want to do this. Well, he never died, never got sick, because he had bread and butter for a whole day, or corn and butter for a whole day. Jesus, there's children that are starving, and they starve, and they live on powdered milk. You've got babies existing from powdered milk. Like your kid can fucking just have toast and butter if that's all they want to prepare. And you know what? If you have a family, if you have a partner and children in the house, and that's the only thing that they can fucking get themselves together and prepare, then that's the system that they're going to, okay, let them. You don't need to be involved in that. They will work that out. But that's also something to like, Jesus Christ. But I'm so sure, hopefully, if you are in partnership, you do have someone that is capable of actually looking after themselves and after the children. And if not, and if you're that person where it's like, well, I've still got to be on, I've still got to get stuff in the freezer, have it all ready. It's like, there's no excuses. And if they go for takeout, who gives a shit? Okay, your kids eat pizza that day. If that's something that you don't want, who gives a shit? You need to rest, and you need to start taking care of your cycle as a woman, not trying to fit it and ignore the signs and ignore who you are as a woman by consistently taking part in the sun cycle and not taking care of yours. So the dark moon, if you're in regenopause, and if you're not bleeding, if you're someone who hasn't had a menstrual cycle for a long time, and if you want support to get that back, reach out to me, because I've got some really good people that I can pass you on to. I won't support you with that, but I have some people one woman that I send all of my clients to when they have issues. I will put you in touch with her. But then you get in sync with the moon in the sky. If you are bleeding and you do have your cycle, then you will do it the day before, tracking your cycle the day before. Now, this, I'm just speaking about the dark moon. I speak about the silence. I'm speaking about being in meditation, dancing, movement, rest, sleep, not speaking to anyone, allowing to get yourself to have downloads. You might even microdose and just be really in the space of nothingness. Any man that's listening to this, men need 1 hour a day of silence, of the space of no demand. 1 hour a day. You're on a sun cycle. You need it daily, but it's a short amount of time. Men also need to go out. They need to go out in the land, go for a weekend, go hunting, go fishing, go skiing, go and do something just be out in nature for the weekend. Just be out in nature. You need to, if you're a photographer, go out. I have a client, actually I had 2 clients now that are 2 older gentlemen who are photographers. And, their thing is to go out. They go in silence and they'll go camping and they will just take photos for 2-3 days. And it's just so rejuvenating. And that is their time of no demand, the space of no demand that is so necessary. But men also need it daily, whereas women, we do this on a monthly cycle. So if you would like to know more, if you'd like to work with me to have some really deep support to shift into this. So first of all, just to know more, be on my Substack, email list. And otherwise, click a link down below so that you can book a discovery call so we can have a chat to see where you would like support and to see if we're a good fit to work together. And in the meantime, just remember, we live on this planet side by side, and we need to be taking care of ourselves so we can show up for the other side, for our men, for our families, for our lovers, for our children. A mother who is not taking care of herself and who believes that she's not worth, or a woman in a household with children, the mother, then you have to fully question and fully remind yourself and the family, children are there because of you. You fucking grew them. You need to have this rest. And you create systems that provide it. Community systems. If you have a partner that is refusing to, then you find another woman. You're not here to have a man's permission to take care of yourself. This is deeply needed in the feminine. And I'm not here dismissing men and going, all men, like many women believe this. I grew up in a family where my mother often would just believe, and through experience, but there were many things that she made assumptions out of. And when I would challenge my dad about it, he didn't have a problem with that. So I'm saying that because I would like, if you feel a resistance, I invite you to question that resistance. Is that coming because you have an past experience, so therefore putting it into the future experience? Or you just also too get to question that you as a woman do not have the right to do these sorts of things. And so where does that come from? Is that really in the relationship? And also too, just because someone doesn't like it and they feel inconvenienced about it, it doesn't mean you do not look after yourself. That's up to them to sort that shit out. I mean, hello, women. Everything is happening in this planet that is, not so for us, and we still need to exist in it. We still need to exist. We still need to be taking part, although I'm implying that you don't need to take part. There's a general consensus that we still need to take part. Well, we don't. That's up to you. All right, lovers, I hope this is really inspiring. I would love to hear down below, wherever you're reading this, listening to this and watching this, if it's on YouTube, what your thoughts are. And let me know. Until then, just fill your life with pleasure. It's your birthright. Lover, you have been inside of the Pleasure Studio, where all things intimate are up for discussion. Thanks for getting real with me today, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If this conversation sparks something within you, do not hesitate to share it by emailing me via the link below. If you're not already, you can follow my good tush on the social media handles also below, and make sure to hit subscribe. Tune in next time for more truths about pleasure and passion. Until then, stay bold, courageous, and truthful as you explore your pleasure your way.